Hi, I'm John Morris with Advantage Property Management. Today I'm going to talk to you about the importance of a written lease. Now, I know I quite often will get a call from an owner who has done some sort of handshake agreement. And while that's, fantastic that you're trying to help out your brother-in-law or, a friend of the family, you just have to remember that you're not always setting yourself or them up for success. Now I wholeheartedly believe, yes, we are called to help folks out. But one thing I want to bring to your attention is by not having a written lease and written expectations, we oftentimes set that person up for a situation where they're going to fail. To give you an example, I recently had a call from a client that I've been managing their house for a couple of years. They had an issue where an elderly parent had lived in a property. She had passed, and they moved a friend into the property. Well, the friend had started to do some repairs to the house, had really undertaken a lot of repairs to the house that weren't approved. The friend wasn't paying rent. There were no real expectations of what was supposed to happen and what wasn't. In Georgia, we can't just say, hey, you gotta go. You've let that person live there. You have to establish, what the expectations are. So in that instance, they hired me. I had to give them a 60-day notice to tell them, here are your expectations. When they didn't meet those expectations, we still didn't have a written lease, and we had to file for the eviction. Fortunately, that process all worked out. We met at the courthouse. We got things we arranged for a vacancy. I couldn't really pursue a money judgment because what was expected, what was in that lease, and I wasn't going to go in front of the judge and say, hey, I don't have a lease. Oh, here's what we're trying to do. So we just sought to vacate that property, and the owner will just have to live with the fact that they don't have the income for the time that they were there. I've also had instances, basically the same situation, where an elderly parent lived there. They moved a friend in or a family member in, and in some of them they do work out, but they actually wanted me to keep that tenant on to get a new lease signed, collect a security deposit, kind of start things the way they should have been all along. Well, I show up that one day, and the tenant place is a mess. We can work through that. We can kind of see that there's no damage. It's just clutter and belongings, things of that nature. So it's not that big a deal. But when we sit down and start talking about the monthly rent, the security deposit that she was known that was going to be due, she doesn't have it. So we've got to make arrangements for that. When that wasn't met, now we've got a problem. We've got a tenant at sufferance that we can then proceed to get the legal eviction completed. The issue there was, we're 3/4 of the way through the eviction. I've got the sheriff's office scheduled, and she calls up and says, well, what about my mom's belongings that are in the house? What are we going to do with those? Well, in Georgia, you get the sheriff to show up. The sheriff and the eviction crew have all of the belongings placed out on the front yard. They're not going to let us say, oh, that one stays, that one stays, that one stays. Fortunately, that all worked out. But that's part of what you need to make sure all of the expectations are met. Not only that, and how do you proceed to get a money judgment in those instances where it doesn't happen? Now, a good property manager, we know things like that happen. We don't mind coming in and being the bad guy if we have to. Obviously, we'd like to make win-win situations for everyone, but a good property manager isn't going to let that happen to start with. You want your friend to move into this house, that's fine. They should apply like everybody else. We should take a look at their credit, their criminal background, their civil background, their previous rental history, and their income, and make sure that they would be qualified for this property, and that we're not setting you up to have a failure in your rental property, and we're not setting them up to have a failure in maintaining the standards of your investment. So That's it. In sum, never do a handshake agreement. Even if it is a friend of the family, put it all in writing, set those expectations, make sure everyone knows what it is that needs to happen from day one through the end of the lease so that you don't have a situation where you're setting someone up to fail. All right, that's it. Thanks a lot.